Welcome to the Sports Business Take podcast, your home for sports industry news with a little personality. I'm Paul Hine, and he is Zach Creekmore. How you doing today, Zach?
Doing good, Paul. How are you, brother?
I'm great, man. It's been a busy couple weeks. By Sunday, I will have worked 9 of the last 10 days, so definitely busy few weeks. But other than that, I've gotten some really cool opportunities. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start off the podcast talking about a couple of them.
Yeah, run it, brother. Here we go.
Yeah, so last weekend, the Savannah Bananas were in town for the Portland Sea Dogs. Yeah, we hosted them, and for those who don't know, the Savannah Bananas are basically an alternative baseball league, or not even a league, it's just a team. They have 2 teams, but basically there's a whole bunch of different rules that try to make the game more fun, right? Like one example that I saw a lot personally was fans can catch a foul ball and it's an out, which is awesome, right? It really creates some fan integration, and honestly, I think they did the best job I've ever seen any sports team do for integrating the fans. I mean, their players were up in the stands, interviewing people. Their players were like, right before the game, 2 guys went up to the top of the stands, to their players, and were throwing bananas over the net to these guys on the field who had these big pants, these big baggy pants, and were trying to catch them in the pants. And like they do fun games like that all the time. And they take what could be done in a game to the extreme, right? I saw a pitcher throw a strike standing on second base. I saw a guy hit a ball with a flaming bat. I saw 3 guys in a pyramid on the pitcher's mound, and one drops down and throws a strike. Somebody threw a strike with a hockey stick. Like, there's everything you could imagine. It's the most unbelievable show you've ever seen in your life. And they don't call it a game. They call it a show because That's what it's meant to be. It's supposed to be entertainment. And I feel like that's the best job I've ever seen anybody do of entertaining a crowd. I've worked at Hadlocked all season. That was the most electric I've seen that place by far. By far. And we do a good job of integrating our fans. We pride ourselves in having a good atmosphere, but it was nothing like the Bananas. It's basically like a party for 4 hours. Like, you go out on the concourse before the game, even before gates open. The way it works is gates open at like 5:30 for a 7 o'clock game, and which is crazy, by the way, because everybody rushes in all at one time instead of like orderly getting to their seats. It's all general admission, so just a wave of people. I was selling Cokes. I had a wave of people just crash at me. And I just decided to get up on a bench and start selling Cokes, like, so people could see me. But it was the most unbelievable experience I've ever had in my life. And I emailed their owner after, and I was like, you guys are amazing. Is there, what advice would you have for me if I wanted to maybe try to get an internship with you guys or get involved with you guys in a couple of years?
Right.
And he hasn't emailed me back yet. Hopefully he will. But it was just an unbelievable weekend. One of the best weekends of my life, to be honest. Although I did have a fan be the rudest to me ever of anybody there. But it's just one person. It doesn't matter. So sorry, I've been talking for a while. Did you have any questions about like the Bananas? Because you probably heard they were in town.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I saw it everywhere, right? Instagram, Snapchat stories, obviously getting in contact with you, seeing it. I had friends texting me and being like, hey, I'm in town seeing the Bananas. You want to come by? But really, really, really cool to see and also hear about the experience you had, because that's really what they bring. You see their presence on social media and what they express, and that's so realistically them about the experience they offer to their fans. It's like, and the connections they make is amazing. Like, I don't have any questions I can think of. It's just, they do a beautiful job.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of what sports should be. I feel like in sports we too often get into the routine of you go to the game, you sell the tickets, you go to the game, you go home, right? And
Right.
that's it. It can be so much more than that. It can be a lifetime memory. I mean, one rule that they just added this tour was they pick a fan from the crowd that they deem the biggest banana fan, and the fan can challenge any play during the game, but he only gets one challenge.
No way.
But a fan can challenge a play during the game, and he pops like a bottle of confetti to be able to challenge it. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. And of course the whole crowd goes nuts when the guy pops the confetti, right?
Right.
You know, one guy did it in like the 8th inning and people were happy about it. And then the second day I worked, somebody did it in the 2nd inning and people were like, "Why didn't you save it?" So it gets the crowd into it, right?
Right.
And they do really cool things, even with some TikTok stuff or some music. Like both nights, they had in the 8th inning, all the lights in the stadium shut off. Saturday night they started playing "Hello" by Adele,
Okay.
and everybody's phone flashlights went on, and it's just all the people waving their phone flashlights, no lights. I have a video of it. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a stadium like that, other than a concert. Like, this isn't a concert. This is a sports game. And it was like that. It was one of the most wild things I've ever seen in my life. And I think I really want to now work in an environment that provides that level of an experience to fans, because how can you beat that?
Yeah. How can you? It is amazing, and it's unprecedented how innovative and creative they've been, and the boundaries they've tested and been able to experiment with. Right. In a traditional sports league, you're not able to do that. Right. You have certain rules and things you have to follow. Because they're in an untraditional format, they're able to test that boundary, and they're able to really do these things that create what is a unique and amazing experience. And that's really what you're expressing here, right? And it makes
Yeah,
it a
for
really
sure.
interesting opportunity.
You put it a lot more elegantly than I did, but
I'm good with
Yeah,
words
that's
from time to
basically-
time.
yeah, that's basically what I was getting at. And then the other one that I just wanted to share was shout out to our director of creative services, Chelsea, for letting me job shadow her last night. That was really cool. During the game, I went up to essentially like the production room next to the press box, and I was shadowing her. And she does like all the stuff on our video board, so she makes all the graphics, puts them up, and organizes that whole thing. And our PA announcer's in the same room, so I was talking to him a little bit. Actually, he went to St. Joe's for a grad
No
degree.
way.
Yeah, and his name is Paul, so I was like, this is really cool. And then the TV stuff is set up in there for the broadcast, which is also pretty cool to see. You wouldn't believe the complex computer systems that they have up there. It's pretty cool to learn. And I think maybe that's one thing I'm considering, is maybe going into like graphic design or along with social media, some type of creative field. So I feel like that was a really good experience for me, and that was really cool. But those were just two things I wanted to touch on before we got into like our normal topics. I'm ready to dive into what we had if you are.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear about your experience and getting that, because that's awesome. And it's awesome to be able to job shadow somebody who you've worked with all summer and have that opportunity. So kudos to you for getting to do that. That's amazing, man. Really, really excited for you. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's dive in.
I've been talking a lot. Is there anything you want to share about like what your work week's been like?
2-a-days, RA training, on the grind. That's all I can say.
Yeah. For those who notice we haven't been back in a while, I mean, he's had RA training in soccer, and I've been working the last 2 weeks straight, basically with one day off. So we're working through it. We may not do weekly episodes for a while, but we'll definitely do like every other week if we can't do every week. So thank you for being patient with us, because we're both very busy. So let's get into what we have for the day. You want to introduce the first topic, since I just talked for like 10 minutes straight?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So first topic we have for the day, pickleball demand, right? Pickleball, one of the biggest sports growing in the last 2-3 years, really boomed during COVID, and we're seeing a report come out about demand and infrastructure needing to be built to be able to provide said to answer the demand, if that makes sense. Like quid pro quo. We have this demand, we need to provide this to reach it. Right? So a study by the sports and fitness industry and digital platform Picklehead projected that there would need to be $900 million of building infrastructure. $900 million, right? So that's pickleball / tennis courts built throughout major cities, major areas where there's that demand, right? Talking about New York City, LA, stuff like that. I guess you could say Chicago too in there, right? Those types of cities where they're big population, pickleball is kind of starting to draw and create interest there.
Yeah,
projected
definitely.
to need to make 25,784 courts.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, that was the crazy part to me because what other sport is adding 25,000 new arenas, fields, etc.? No other sport. This might be the fastest growing sport in America right now. Maybe in the world, but certainly in America. There's no other sport that's adding 25,000 new fields in the next couple years. Like, that's insane. There's not enough room in the country to build 25,000 football fields. There's not enough room in the country to build 25,000 baseball fields that aren't already existing. But pickleball, it's a bit of a smaller scale sport, I want to say. But the demand is growing like crazy. You're starting to see it everywhere, right? I went to an island at the beginning of this month, and I went there the previous year as well. They put in a pickleball court this year, and they're so remote that they don't even have like a grocery store, but they have a pickleball court. So that's just an example of how the demand for this sport is growing. And if you actually play it, it's pretty fun, right? It's like wiffle ball combined with tennis. It's great. But I just couldn't believe 25,000 courts were needed. And just for those who are wondering the participant numbers, that's 8.9 million participants in the last year or so, which is a 158% increase from 2019. That's the largest participation increase in any sport by a factor of about 3. About 3. I'll just let that sit for a minute. That is insane, right? And do you want to talk about how you think you see this sport growing a little bit in the future?
Oh, absolutely. We look at pickleball, and I said it a couple years back when I was hearing about this new pickleball league coming forward, pickleball growing. I had just actually started playing it for myself when I went on vacation. I see pickleball growing massively. We see rec leagues coming forward. We see something where it's like, okay, this is the sport that they have for the elderly. We have a Silver Sneakers program on campus. They have pickleball, right?
That's true.
It's a big thing, not only in that community, but it's also growing to the younger people. I believe on the article we read, the average age was 35, right, for the average pickleball player.
That's what surprised me was how young the average age was, because I thought of pickleball as kind of an old person sport, because the exposure I had to pickleball before was at home. There's a training facility in the town next to me that I used to go to for high school baseball, where they also have pickleball courts, and you wouldn't see a person playing pickleball who was under 50. So that was kind of my exposure to pickleball. And when it said 35, I'm like, wow, a lot of our generation must be getting into that then, and maybe I haven't seen a lot of that personally, but it's apparent in the numbers.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the groups of people that are hopping in, and it's kind of like there's people from tennis playing pickleball. There's people from other sports going in and playing pickleball because they're wanting that kind of competitive edge. Like athletes, people who were athletes in high school and athletes throughout they crave that, right? They crave something where it's a little bit competitive, where they can beat somebody and they can have a good time, right? They want
and it's something a little different too. It's not like a traditional sport, so it's also low impact, right? So people that have had large injuries or career-ending injuries, for whether you want to call it high school athletes, retired high school athletes, or retired college athletes, whatever, they can go play this and have a low impact on their body and still have a competitive avenue to explore. So I want to see if you agree with this. Major League Pickleball founder Steve Kuhn said that he thinks pickleball would be a top 5 league in viewership in the next 5 years. Do you think that's going to be true?
And it's tough to say. We're saying top 5 leagues right now in the U.S. NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, MLS.
MLS.
Is pickleball
Do you think it
ranked
knocks
in that
any of
top
those
5?
off in 5 years?
I think it'll definitely be that 6 in 3.
I think so too.
And
I think it'll be
it
6.
Could,
I don't
could
think
test,
it cracks top 5.
It could test for that 4 or 5 really soon. It depends on how hockey and baseball continue to grow and adjust, and seeing where they go. Because we've talked about and looked at trends where baseball specifically has had decreases in viewerships, and the way they view the game has changed. So interesting.
Yeah, and they're increasing now too, which makes
Exactly.
it harder for pickleball to slide in.
So it'll be really interesting to see, and I think I love his confidence in saying that, but at the same time, I really see pickleball as the 6 for at least the next 5 to 8 years, right?
I
'Cause
agree.
With this building infrastructure, there's going to be issues, right? People love tennis. Like, I love playing tennis. But the biggest issue in tennis is it doesn't have that infrastructure, right? Unless you're in a big city or big area. So there's
Also, to be part of a tennis club is expensive, right? A lot
Exactly.
of these people who play tennis have a good amount of money, and to play pickleball, it seems like you don't. That's not a requirement, right? You don't need to have that level of wealth to be part of a club, which is why I think for them, building in these inner cities is such a genius idea to get people hooked on their sport, because you're talking about going into more than likely low-income neighborhoods and giving them an opportunity to use something that they wouldn't really get access to otherwise.
Correct. And I do agree with you there, where if they're targeting their audience and picking that, like, we want to build here for these reasons to be able to offer this and make it an easily accessible resource. Because, like, you can get into pickleball and buy everything you need to play pickleball for about $25. Right?
Yeah.
Which is really, really impressive
Very low
if you
cost.
have an open free court. Right?
Right.
But the problems become, if they're building this $900 million of infrastructure, will it become that they are pickleball clubs in a similar sense that they're tennis clubs? Because
Right.
you look at New York City, in Central Park, there's probably about 200-300 tennis courts.
Right.
Maybe I'm over-exaggerating there, but there's a lot, right? You walk by,
Right.
you run by, you see them. And it's a lot, like a lot.
Right.
But to be able to access that, it's $150 a month membership fee. Because there's so
Yeah,
much
that's
demand that they can charge that, and people will actually pay it so they can go and play their tennis.
Right. Yeah, that's steep. And in the cities too, you also have a distribution of wealth, right? You have very rich people and not as rich people. So I wonder how the balance of the participation will skew in terms of what you're talking about, where you could see it develop into clubs because of the demand being so high, or if it'll be kind of like a free use type of thing.
Right.
I think for now it's probably going to be a free use type of thing until they get like a mass audience where they can grow those clubs and start to charge a little bit,
Yes.
But for now, I think it's a great opportunity to actually grow their sport by building in those inner cities. Is there anything else you had on pickleball? Other than it's fun. Like, I think people should go try it out. I tried it out and I thought it was more fun than I was expecting. So,
Right.
is there anything else you have on that?
No, yes, but no, right? I think what we've spoken to here is we see pickleball, and I think their investment will be rewarded in the next 10 years of growth. But I'm really curious to see what happens in that 10 years, because what happens when they have to start investing in the upkeep of these courts, because that
True.
gets expensive, right? And when you have to do that, and you're doing it over and over and over again, and you're keeping them free, open access to the public without getting anything in kind of return, unless you're running tournaments on it and you're actually making money based on those tournaments because you're able to rent and kind of use those courts, it becomes a kind of more complex, interesting issue because you're not having that membership fee where it can be you can come by whenever you want, right? They
True.
have courts like that throughout the cities. My dentist is in New York City, right? So I park on like 16th Street-ish, and where I park, I walk by and I see there's racquetball courts, there's tennis courts, just a little park. There's a couple of them, but people were there playing pickleball against the wall, playing pickleball.
Right.
Look, awesome! I love to see that. That's great. They're getting their exercise in. They're having a good time. But that access and demand, it does get difficult. So my only concern with pickleball, because I think it's a great sport, low impact. We've talked about all the benefits. We talked about it as a great resource. It has a really good low entry price. Although you can get more expensive, like they have more expensive rackets. For example, I spent $55 on a racket the other day.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, just because I wanted to have one on me, right? And I thought it was really cool. I picked it up. It was Walmart. I spent $50 plus like $8 on balls. But I could have gotten a set of 2 rackets for $20. I would have
Right,
set,
but relative to other sports equipment, that's still pretty low, right? You know,
Yes.
you can go buy a baseball bat for $400, $500, right? You can go buy a pair of cleats for $200. So relative $50 isn't that bad, right? That's really
Correct.
not a bad entry price. And I want to go back to something that you had mentioned with the court maintenance.
Yes.
I'd seen that some pickleball courts can actually be concrete. So
Yes.
do you think they would need to be maintained as much if they were concrete courts other than putting the net up and maintaining the net?
Even concrete, I think, especially in the Northeast, needs treatment, right? 'Cause
True. That's
cracks
true.
occur, ice gets in there, right, and it becomes issues and becomes unsustainable and unplayable, right? So it still needs
True.
maintenance, although it's not. It becomes less than every year, maybe. It's a bit different, but I do think there's still maintenance there, specifically in the Northeast. Maybe it's a bit different in California or in Florida or anything like that. So
Yeah, because they
it's
can play
definitely-
year round.
definitely
They don't
fair.
have snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then the other point I wanted to make about pickleball, and I see pickleball really quickly becoming in the next like year or so the new shuffleboard of vacation. Right?
Yeah,
You go on
for sure.
vacation, you go and you're like, oh, let's play pickleball. I don't know what it is about it, but I want to play pickleball.
Yeah, it seems like a vacation sport for sure. At least to us here in the Northeast, because we wouldn't get to play it year round. But maybe to people in other areas that don't have snow 3/4 of the year, they could play it the whole year, which would make it less of a vacation sport. But yeah, really excited to see what pickleball does in the next couple years. Do you mind if we move on?
Let's do it.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about, we don't have like a script or an article to go off of, but I saw this on social media and I thought this was really cool, so I wanted to mention it. Deion Sanders, head football coach of Colorado University, started putting his players' social media tags on the back of their uniforms instead of their names. What was your first reaction when you saw this?
And I have to say, although I think it's cool, my first reaction was, right? I submit,
Really?
I'm a bit more of a traditional person in terms of sports and jerseys, and I'm like, all
Okay.
right, I'm here, I'm representing St. Joe's, representing the school. To have my name on the jersey even is like wow, that's a big
It's a
deal.
pride thing.
Right?
Yeah.
To have your social media handle on it, I'm like, I didn't feel entirely comfortable with it. I wouldn't feel doing that as a coach would be the right thing. But I do
You could
see
tailor your
the
social
benefits.
media to your name, though, right? You could just tailor your account name to what you want to have on the back of your jersey.
Correct.
Although, like, it does make it hard to tell who's who, I would guess. For if you're scouting these guys as a NFL coach, right?
Right.
You go to a practice and you just see their social media handles on the back of their jerseys and not their names. You're like, who's that? You know, it could be some random handle, right?
Right.
Instead of having their name in it. So maybe it'll force them to tailor their social media handles to having their name in it.
Definitely interesting think there. Like, my original thought was that it would be name, number, social media, if that makes sense. Right?
Right.
I didn't think of it originally as the swap with the name, which makes it a bit more okay idea to me, because if they already have their names on their jerseys, why not have the social media? I get it, because it has the NIL benefits that we talk about, and it makes it just so they're, like, social media is a big player, a big part of...
Right. It's exposure. That's really what it is. It's
Exactly.
marketing exposure. That's exactly what it is. And honestly, I can't believe that this is really the first time we've seen a major program think of this. Like, social media has been a thing for 10 plus years, and this is the first time we're seeing this. It's genius to me, right? Because you can market yourself because you're doing something different for your players that nobody else is doing, right? And this helps in recruiting. Kids see this, right? And they think, oh, they can get me some NIL deals because they're exposing me more on social media, or they're promoting me more, right? If I want to get scouted, scouts can just go look at my social media if they're watching film because my tag's on the back of my jersey, right?
Right.
So the exposure that they're creating is kind of it's the whole point, but B, it's ingenious to me. It's what it is really comes down to brand awareness, right? I mean, Colorado football, their brand now is directly linked to the players having their social media on the back of the jerseys.
And I agree. Very cool, very innovative. And I think very Deion Sanders, right? If we look at what his brand has been as a coach, it has been, I am here for my players. I'm here to promote my guys. Make them, like, players will go there purely because of him and what he's willing to do for them, right?
Right. He's a player's first coach for sure.
Big time. And he's pushing that. You saw all the guys, I forget which, I apologize because I wish I remembered where he was before Colorado, but you saw a lot of guys follow him to Colorado from Jackson State. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's a huge statement to his character, his coaching, and what he values. And I think it's something that we could see a lot more of as he kind of has an influence on the next generation of coaches, right?
Absolutely. I think this is going to be instituted in not just the college game, but maybe eventually some professional games. If, or semi-pro leagues, right? Why wouldn't semi-pro leagues pick this up, right?
Yeah.
The concept, at least. Think about it. Semi-pro leagues in general don't get as much exposure as, like, the big four that we talked about, right? The MLB, the NHL, the NFL, and the NBA, and the MLS, too. The big five, really. Right. They don't get as much exposure as those five, so why would they not pick that up and make their players more easily accessible, right, to the public? It makes the fans feel like you know the players better, right? There's so many different benefits that you can think about to doing this.
Absolutely. I like that semi-pro league shout. I think it's a good take, and definitely you could see leagues, especially with the growth and the interest we talked about from USL, stuff from MLB minor leagues, stuff from the G League. I think you could see a lot of that usage, and that definitely has a lot of power and pull because you're getting more eyes on it, and it's especially with minor league, it doesn't have as many eyes. It's about getting more eyes on it. Right.
Exactly.
I'm sure for you working with the Sea Dollars, for me working with ACC, it was huge about how can we promote and get eyeballs on it. What can we make that's going to entice people? What do people find interesting? Right.
Oh,
What's
absolutely.
going to get those 15,000 views on a reel that I made. Right. And sometimes it's picking the right song. Sometimes it's picking the right clips, making sure you have those moments. Sometimes it's just making sure there's a sheer amount of information out there where you've got 10, 15 stories up, and then you make a reel that kind of has the same information, but people are seeing it again. They're like, oh, I forgot I saw that. That's so sick. Right. So, in using that player's social media, not only can you more easily tag them in something, right, but also you're getting that information out there. You're getting more eyeballs on it. Say they get on a SportsCenter top 10, how many people are going to go on the Sports Center top 10, go and see, oh, that's that guy's social media. Let me check him out. Maybe he has some other stuff going on there, right?
100%.
Cool
That's going to
opportunity.
get them. Yeah, it's going to get them more awareness for sure. And I think one of the most ingenious parts about it, and really the reason that Dion did it, was for the NIL purposes, right? Because now companies can see these guys and just reach out to them directly, right? Without having to go through the coach, without having to go through the university, or without having to even send an email. And let's be honest, people our age check their social media more than their email, right? So if these companies want to get in touch with them, they have a direct link to them now,
Yeah.
which is absolutely, I've said the word too much, but genius. It is. There's really no other way to describe it. Is there anything else you had about that? I've kind of like talked myself out about it.
No, and I just completely agree with you. It is genius. It is Deion Sanders again and again showing that he thinks outside of the box and how innovative and what he's bringing and how unique of an opportunity it is for him, his programs, and his players going forward. So really impressed by him. Really interested to see where this kind of goes, what it kind of makes Colorado going forward, and how it impacts possibly future coaches and future programs
Absolutely.
20 years down the line if somebody else
Absolutely.
picked this up maybe next season, right? Is this
Yeah.
something we start to see more widespan? It's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah. I think it'll get more eyes on them for sure. It certainly has on social media, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
are talking about it. And this story is like a week or two old. We put this together a little bit ago, and we've just been having some issues scheduling because of what I had mentioned earlier. We're both extremely busy. So excuse us if, we're talking about something that you saw over a week ago, but but I think it's still an interesting thing to talk about. All right, let's move on to our sports quote of the week. So, mine was, this is from White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Ultimately, the well-worn cliche that professional sports is results-oriented is correct. I laughed out loud when I saw that. So, just for some context for those who don't know, they just fired their GM and one of their senior vice presidents, basically, because they're not having a great year performance-wise, right? And their organization is in a tough spot. They don't have a great farm system, which means minor league teams, for those who don't know. And they don't have a great major league team. And there's been a lot of stories about how there's been dissent in their clubhouse recently, right? Their players not gelling. So their solution was to replace the GM, right? And that's a solution that we see teams commonly go to. But we don't see owners commonly make comments quite like that.
Yeah, no. And you see it oftentimes where things aren't going right and they're saying, okay, we like this group of guys, but it just isn't flowing right. We're going to sack the manager, bring somebody new in with new ideas, and try to bring something different. But it isn't always where someone comes across and says, it's not that we didn't like the GM, it's just he wasn't getting results. Right? And that's the reality
Right.
of it. But sometimes people aren't
Right.
so
That's the
they try
unsaid
to be nice
thing,
about
right?
it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a way of framing things in like a PR way, right? Where you're a little less blunt about it. I'm not sure I've ever seen an owner be quite as blunt about it as he was in that statement.
No. But it
Which
is
I
true.
mean, I don't mind, right? At least he's being transparent with the public, right? I'm sure their fans don't mind either, right? At least they now know that like he cares, right? At least he
Right.
cares about the team performing well, which is a good thing if you're a fan base. And I feel bad for the GM having to have heard this statement, right? But maybe it is a good thing he can be a little more direct. I just thought it was a little out of the ordinary. Whether you
Yeah.
want to say it's good or not is up to you. I'm not going to say either way what I think, but it's certainly not something we see traditionally in press conferences like that.
Especially in U.S. sports.
Especially, right.
In European, and especially in soccer, you see people be a bit more blunt sometimes about a firing, and they share information or say certain things. But at the same time, it's like in U.S. sports, there isn't that. That's just we're very close-minded in terms of that. when you go to the press, you're talking to the press.
Right.
You're
There's
not
a certain
sharing
way you're
that.
supposed to act.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, but I do think that this is him being honest, being authentic, and being straightforward that we didn't get the results
Authentic.
we
That's
wanted,
the word
so
I was looking
found a new
for.
guy.
You said the
Right?
word I was looking for. Authentic. I couldn't think of it.
Awesome.
All right, let's move on to yours.
Yes. So, as many of us know, as I hope those who are listening know, Women's World Cup final was this past week. I believe it was Monday?
I didn't
I'm
have the
hoping it is
chance to
Monday.
watch because I've been working. So
It was no, actually it was Sunday. It was definitely Sunday. I'm just blanking. But England captain Millie Bright, said this after the game. It's really hard to take. We gave everything. We were absolutely heartbroken, but unfortunately we weren't there today. And I take this quote to take us in a bit of a different direction. I've had a lot of conversations in the past week where it's about, and I've had experience where you feel defeated, you feel discouraged, you've given your all to something and you didn't get the result you wanted. And this England team now, having done that, they did a great job, played great in the World Cup, really deserved to go to the final. Didn't deserve to win on the day, obviously they didn't win. But now they have to deal with that. And how do they handle that? How do you as a person, how do we as a person handle quote-unquote failure?
right.
and
It's how do
miss
you respond?
Success. How do you respond? How do you react? And I've been speaking to this. You identify where you succeeded. You identify where you want to go again and act again. And you pick yourself up, you dust it off, and you say, let's go. Right?
Right.
I think for me, I've had a lot of failure in my sport. And a lot of it has been redefining my role and better understanding where do I need to put myself? How can I position myself to get better? How can I position myself to build my mentality again? Right? And this England
Right.
team now, they're going to go through this, hopefully with the same coach. I don't want to see the coach leave. I think they should really extend her contract. It goes till 2025, so hopefully she gets a new one going further where she can go and do the next World Cup, because I think they really have a lot going for them. And I really, really am excited to see how they respond to this more than anything
Right.
else. It's how you respond to failure, not the failure.
Right. And that can go beyond just playing sports, right? That can go to working in sports too, right? To me, the first thing I thought of was, let's say you're trying to make a sale in the ticket office, right? And it's a big company, and you're trying to sell a sponsorship, and you're almost there, but then they pull out at the last second. It's how are you going to respond? Or you're a social media manager, and you make a post that you think is great. You put a lot of time into it, and you really put, let's say you did a bunch of Photoshop and, learned how to do some animation and all this different stuff and put it into a good package that you thought was going to work well, and then it doesn't perform so well, right? You don't get a lot of views on it. How do you respond? How do you grow? How do you learn?
Yeah.
And I think that's very applicable for really everything in life, but particularly working in sports. So that's what I got out of it.
Absolutely agree, and that's exactly where I wanted it to go, right? It's beyond just playing in sports, working outside of sports. How do you respond, react, and create greatness in the future? Not exactly how do you learn from your failure, but how do you live with it and make something better out of it, right?
Absolutely. That's part of growing as a person, for sure.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of growth to be had in that. A lot of growth.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's a pretty good place to end the podcast. What do you think?
Agreed.
As always, thank you guys for listening. Go follow us on social media, SBT_podcast on Instagram and SBT.pod23 on TikTok. I want to get a YouTube up soon, so hopefully we'll do that and we can post the full video there as well as on Spotify. I like now that we can switch over to this new platform, now that we can post the video to Spotify too, as well as the audio. I also like how we've been able to do like certain layouts for stuff, like so it shows the speaker instead of just both of us. I think this is really cool, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it too. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully, we'll get a guest on soon. I want to talk to you about lining something up for soon.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you, guys. See you next week.
See you next week.